Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the Hunt channel. While I was on vacation last week, chapter 1156 dropped and it was an absolute banger. In the chapter, we finally get to see an actual fight in between Garp and Roger, showing the two strike each other with what seems to be advanced Conqueror's Haki. Additionally, we also see Rox announce that he is looking for 2 Devil Fruits, and we see more members of his crew. Perhaps we could do a theory on what those 2 Devil Fruits are, but that will be for a different time. Today though, this will be a slightly different video than my usual theories, but this will have a big theory at the end. So I'm still going to put theory in the title, but this will be more of an analysis of the Kuja Pirates and the Empresses of Amazon Lily, rather than just a theory. Let me know if you all enjoy videos like this, because I would love to do more. There are plenty of people and events in the story that take place during the timeline of One Piece that have shaped the world that we see in Luffy's adventure, and I want to make videos that focus on a specific subject or group of subjects and find the details of when they happened and the timeline around them. That was a long-winded way to say, think of this as your one-stop shop for Kuja Pirate info and history. And if there's a subject that you are interested in and want the full timeline of, leave them in the comments below. Also, if there's anything that I missed or got wrong, feel free to correct me down below as well. But without further ado, let's get right into this. We will start with the oldest empress that we know about, which is Gloriosa. While her exact age is unknown, Gloriosa was the empress 44 years ago, as shown in the chapter, and she is still alive today, going by Granny Neon, and we first meet her during the Amazon Lily arc. During chapter 1156, we see that she was in love with Gold Deep Roger, but Roger was not interested in her the same way. As the Kuja crew leaves, we see Gloriosa fall due to love sickness, and during the Amazon Lily arc, Gloriosa states that she suffered from the disease but survived due to fleeing the land. Well, the next time that we see her according to the timeline is 38 years ago at God Valley with the Rocks Pirates. So sometime within 44 to 38 years ago, Gloriosa left the kingdom and joined the Rocks Pirates for an unknown reason. But we could presume that she either fell in love with Rox or followed Rox in order to get close to Roger, as he was also at God Valley. We can assume that she and the Rocks Pirates disbanded after Rox's defeat on God Valley, but I would like to theorize that she still had her good looks until Roger passed away 22 years ago, seeing as Oda has shown that when characters don't accomplish their dreams, they turn much uglier. This same phenomenon can be seen with Buckingham Stussy, also a Rocks Pirates member, but she loved Whitebeard. They assumingly didn't get together as she is much shorter and uglier than her Rocks Pirate counterpart. 15 years ago, Fisher Tiger climbed the Red Line and freed the slaves from Mary Joie, including Boa Hancock and her sisters. Sometime after that, Gloriosa finds them and takes them to Shaki's bar to hide them, before returning to Amazon Lily and being pardoned by the current empress, who would be named Tritoma, as it is a crime to abandon Amazon Lily. 13 years ago, Boa became the empress and Gloriosa became her advisor, and then everything else that we see about Gloriosa we have seen within Luffy's time. I would like to point out though that in the chapter we see Gloriosa complaining about her looks and wishes to strip her beauty away. Well, if that was her dream, she definitely accomplished it, as we see, so good job. The empress that took the throne after Gloriosa was Shaku Hyaku. We are first introduced to her in Sabaody Archipelago, as the owner of Shaki's rip-off bar. However, it isn't revealed that she was a former empress until after Wano, when her and Rayleigh came to Boa's aid in order to stop Blackbeard and the Navy, over 500 chapters after her introduction. Shaku Hyaku, also known as Shaki, became the empress after Gloriosa left the crew 44 to 38 years ago. However, it is stated that she retired being a pirate 40 years ago during the pre-time skip, so that's now 42 years. That means that Chaki was the Empress for only 2 years at most, before she contracted love sickness stated by Gloriosa and in an SBS later on. But we will get to that SBS in just a moment. She obviously fell in love with Brayley, as we see them together at her bar, but we also see her wink at him aboard the Kuja pirate ship during the chapter. When Shaggy left the island, she went to Sabaody and opened her bar, but it is important to mention that Brayley was still a pirate until Roger's passing 24 years ago, a 22-year difference, meaning that he didn't settle down with her until way later. Currently, she is 64 years old, so in chapter 1156, she would have been 20. And she is seemingly the only Empress that has gotten with the person that she loves, as she has aged like fine wine. As previously mentioned, when Gloriosa found the Poa sisters, she brought them to Shaki's bar for safekeeping. I would like to point out though that within the chapter, when Gloriosa falls due to her illness, Shaki grabs her and says, quote, "Get a grip, sister." This statement is clarified in the Japanese, where Shaki says, Nissan, specifically a meaning older sister, proving that the two are related and giving another layer as to why Shaki chose to help Gloriosa here. As far as we know though, Shaki has remained at her bar, spending her days with Brayley, when he's actually there that is, until Luffy and the crew arrive on Sabaody within the story. The next and the most mysterious Empress is named Tritoma. We are introduced to Tritoma in the actual story in this latest chapter, and it is stated that she is the future Empress 2 generations later. However, Oda actually revealed her earlier in the SBS I mentioned previously. In SBS Volume 109, the question was asked about Gloriosa saying the previous 2 Empresses passed away due to love sickness, but Oda clarified that she said that the previous 2, quote, suffered from the disease. Which I will say all the translations that I found said died, but we'll just go with what Big Oda says. Well, he shows us that Chaki did indeed suffer from it, but she escaped the same way Gloriosa did, so she survived. But that Tritoma also suffered from the disease, but that she was the only one to pass away from it. We also do not know her exact age, but if we see that Chaki left 42 years ago, and then Poa became Empress 13 years ago, then Tritoma was the Empress for 29 years, the longest we know of currently. As stated, she would have been the Empress who pardoned Gloriosa when she returned with Poa and her sisters, but she would have also been the Empress during the God Valley incident. But most importantly, she would have been the Empress in command when Poa and her sisters were kidnapped from the Kuja pirate ship. We will talk more about Tritoma later, but before that, let's go over Poa's history. Poa Hancock is the current Empress of Amazon Lily and captain of the Kuja pirates. She is 31 years old, having taken the throne 11 years ago as stated by Gloriosa, but that was pre-time skip, so it's now 13 years. When she was 12, Poa and her sisters Amerigold and Sandersonia were abducted off of the Kuja pirate ship. As stated, Tritoma was the Empress and captain of the ship at the time, so what was she doing when this happened? She remained there for 4 years, being force-fed the love fruit by the Celestial Dragons, but was eventually rescued by Fisher Tiger when he climbed the Red Line and freed the slaves. She escaped and was eventually found by Gloriosa, who hid her at Chaki's bar before returning to Amazon Lily. 13 years ago, when she was 18, she took the throne and rules the island to this day. Additionally, she joined the 7 Warlords of the Sea when she became the Empress in order to protect the island. She too contracted the love sickness disease when Luffy was sent to the island by Kuma, and she fell in love with him. We can assume she survived the illness due to traveling with Luffy to Impel Down, but also being in close proximity to him during his training over the 2-year time skip. So what does this timeline actually show us? Well, for starters, it shows that all of the Empresses have played a part in each other's lives, which is really cool to see. But also, that the one that we know the least about, in Tritoma, was the longest reigning empress we know of. As stated, we unfortunately don't know how long Gloriosa was empress or even her age, but Shaki was only the empress for 2 years max, and Poa has been the empress for 13 years, leaving Tritoma 29 years to rule. Additionally, as it is stated that all of the empresses had love sickness, Tritoma had to love someone as well, but we can see that they couldn't have been remotely weak, as Gloriosa loved Roger, Shaki loves Rayleigh, and Poa loves Luffy, all conquerors and strong hockey users in their own rights. Additionally, we've seen that 3 of the empresses have met a Monkey D. Garp when he was younger, and presumably Poa has met him being a warlord, but none of them have fallen for him, showing that they haven't loved a strong marine, specifically the strongest one. So with that being said, there has been a theory going around the community that after doing my own research, I can't help but believe it's true. If you haven't heard it yet, prepare to be shocked. But once again, I would like to clarify that this is not my original full theory. I simply heard a part of it, researched it myself, and am telling it to you all in my own words, as well as some original thoughts and connections I found on my own. During Kuma's flashback, we see him visit various places in search of a cure for Bonnie's sapphire scales 6 years ago. During this, we see him go to all of the places he eventually sends the Straw Hats to, where they spend their 2-year time skip. Torino Kingdom for Chopper, Tequila Wolf for Robin, Karakuri Island for Frankie, the Boyne Archipelago for Usopp, Witheria for Nami, Kuraigana Island for Zoro, and the other 2 are a little bit of speculation, but I think that we can assume that this is Namakura Island for Brook, and while it doesn't show it, we could assume that Kuma went to Kamabaka Queendom, as he was good friends with Ivankov for years to send Sanji to. The one that we have absolutely no idea about, though, is Luffy going to Amazon Lily. Oda has stated that Kuma can only travel or send people to places that he has been before, therefore, when would he have gone there? As it wasn't shown when he was looking for a cure, there are 2 other times when Kuma could have visited the island. One of which is when he was following the world government's orders after Saturn demanded he would be turned into a weapon, but to debunk that, Poa would have been a warlord at that point already, so the government wouldn't have had a reason to send Kuma there. Therefore, it is more likely that he went there before that, during the time that he was with the Revolutionary Army and a Monkey D. Dragon. We see that 25 years ago, Kuma reads of Dragon in the newspaper as the leader of the Freedom Fighters. 3 years later, when Pekari throws Kuma and Jinny in prison, Dragon and Ivankov break them out, and Kuma joins their ranks. The narration reveals that it didn't take long for the Freedom Fighters to grow into the Revolutionary Army, and it was after Ohara and Roger's death, more than likely within the same year. We then cut 8 years to 14 years ago when Jinny gets kidnapped. So, within that 8 years, what happened? Well, one thing that happened was Poa's abduction, notably while Tritoma was the Empress. While Tritoma could have heard about Dragon from the newspaper, I think it's more likely that the 2 already knew each other. As we see in chapter 1156, Garp pulls up on the Roger and Kuja pirate meeting, and Shaki states that Garp used to chase her around when she was a pirate. Well, we see Tritoma as a young apprentice aboard the Kuja pirate ship, and while he isn't shown, it's very possible that Dragon was there. We learned that Dragon used to be a marine, presumably following Garp's wishes. As he did with Luffy, Ace, and Sabo, it's very likely that Garp started Dragon out early, as at the time of the chapter, he would have been 11 years old. If he was there, Tritoma and Dragon could have met as apprentices on opposing vessels, as captains of their own ships as they got older, then as leaders of their own groups once Dragon started the Revolutionary Army. Back to the topic at hand though, Tritoma was the Empress when the Poa sisters were kidnapped, and I don't think it's unreasonable to say that she sought Dragon out for help at this time, as his group targets and presumably has the most information on the world government. And she could have known him from a long time ago, so there was already a level of trust amongst them. This moment could have been when Tritoma fell in love with Dragon, and the 2 had a child who would end up to be Monkey D. Luffy. Yes, I believe that Tritoma is the mother of Luffy. The thing that made me truly believe this, though, is if you look at the timeline, Boa was taken when she was 12 years old, and she's 31 now, making it 19 years ago that she was kidnapped. And how old is Luffy right now? 19 years old. This would put the two meeting 3 years after Kuma joined the Revolutionary Army, putting when he goes to Amazon Lily within the 8-year time skip shown in that previous chapter. This would explain why Tritoma passed away from love sickness, as Dragon is known to keep his family far away from him in order to protect them, as we see with Luffy. Additionally, this would explain why Luffy was raised by Garp, as Tritoma couldn't keep him in Amazon Lily, due to him being a man. She more than likely handed him off to Garp or to Dragon to give to Garp, meaning that she presumably suffered love sickness twice, once from her lover and once from losing her child. However, the one part about this theory that kind of makes it a little bit iffy to me is that she would have had love sickness for over 6 years, as the kidnapping took place 19 years ago and Boa became the Empress 13 years ago. The reason for this is because Gloriosa and Boa were in very bad shape when they had love sickness, barely even able to stand. But we should expect Luffy's mother to be strong and willful. In my opinion, that's only natural. The other thing that makes me believe this is she just looks like Luffy. In the image shown in the chapter, she looks so much like Luffy. Her rounded nose, her circular eyes, even her hair looks just like Luffy's, like it has her shape but like Dragon's spiky texture to it. In the panel of her smiling as well, it looks just like when Luffy closes his eyes and smiles. It's just has to be his mom to me. However, it is obvious that Dragon wasn't able to help her free the Boa sisters, as Fisher Tiger had to do it 4 years later. Doing research for this video, I learned that Ginny was captured 14 years ago and Fisher Tiger climbed the Red Line 15 years ago. So literally Ginny was 1 year off of actually being rescued. Sad timing. I guess it is also interesting to mention that before the 8-year jump in Kuma's backstory, Dragon did not have the signature face tattoo, but once it picks up again in 14 years ago, he does have it. Perhaps it's something to do with the fact that he had a child with a woman from Amazon Lily, but that is just extreme speculation and unknown at this time. But as we close, I hope you all did enjoy this video. As I said, I would love to do an in-depth analysis of other groups or individuals, such as Mads or even the Rocks Pirates, and looking at the timeline to see what they all did in their lives. This was a ton of fun to go in and look at the connections between the Kuja Pirates and their history, and I had to put that theory out on my channel as it's such a good one and lines up so well with the timeline. I'm extremely curious to see if we will get Tritoma in any future flashbacks, as she was the Empress for 29 years, and that's quite a long time, but we will find out in the future. But as always, my name is Hunt, actually it's my middle name, and thank you for watching.